Ladies and gentlemen, delve into a tapestry of love, betrayal, and redemption woven through the lives of everyday people. Discover how the threads of fate intertwine, leading to heart-wrenching decisions and life-altering consequences. Are you ready to unravel the intricate stories that lie beneath the surface of ordinary existence? I always imagined that once I found my love, it would last forever. But over ethane I discovered that this was all a delusion. Of course, there are exceptions, such as when people meet and live together until old age. But this is an exception. My fiancée cheated on me with a friend in our bedroom. And then she tried to get back with me. Ethan moved towards the apartment he shared with Isabella. They met in high school, and he was completely captivated by her. When he asked her out, she accepted and they started dating. Ethan was completely in love with Isabella. She was the first female he ever kissed, and the only girl he never dated since. He was so enamored with her that he didn't want to be with anybody else. They dated for a long ethane before getting in ethanate. Isabella was the only girl he had ever kissed and slept with. They attended college together and dated throughout their ethane there. Following graduation, they found jobs, purchased a condo, and moved in together. Isabella's parents paid the down payment on the condo. Therefore, it was in her name. They started their careers and began to arrange their wedding. Ethan purchased her a stunning diamond engagement ring, and he thought his life couldn't be better. Ethan was able to leave work early one Friday, so he picked up some chocolates and flowers before ordering takeout from Isabella's favorite restaurant. He wanted to surprise her and demonstrate how much he loved her. He entered the apartment, placed flowers in a vase and food in the kitchen, and then noticed some noises coming from their bedroom. He strolled down the hall and into the bedroom, where he spotted Isabella and his friend Theo. They were standing with their backs to the door and didn't notice him. Ethan was shocked as he watched his fiancée cheat on him with a buddy. The worst part is that they both spoke hurtful things to Ethan while doing this. This weakling won't be home for another hour or two, so we'll have a lot of fun. Ethan stood there unable to believe or understand what was occurring. Tears streamed down his face. They finished and fell down on the bed, only to see Ethan standing in the bedroom doorway, tears flowing down his cheeks. Theo smiled, and Isabella lay there not comprehending anything. She didn't even feel embarrassed. Ethan stood speechless. Finally, Theo broke the stillness. "You must really want to tidy up after me. Since you're doing this, why don't you take care of the implications for her as well?" Ethan shouted. "How could you betray me like that?" Isabella smiled as she said, "It was easy. I just let him have his way. I loved you. I thought you loved me. He gave me more joy in 1 hour than you did in a week. There's no way I can marry you right now. Make sure you don't get a knock on the door as you leave." Theo chimed in again. "She is truly quite talented. It's unfortunate you didn't figure it out." Ethan's tears continued to fall. "Where shall I go? I do not care. Just get your belongings out of my apartment." Ethan walked into the wardrobe to get his clothing and emerged with a full armful. He acted fast, loading his stuff, computer and personal items into the car. Despite the several images of him with Isabella, he tore them up and threw them away. When he went, he discarded the flowers and food. After observing a young woman nearby, he smiled as he handed her the chocolates and drove aimlessly away. He eventually stopped at the park to have a takeaway snack despite his lack of taste. He considered seeking sanctuary with a buddy, but refrained due to potential concerns. He eventually spent the night at a motel, utilizing his computer to look for affordable housing choices. He had a little checking account before he and Isabella opened a joint account. He then transferred the equivalent of his last paycheck from their joint account to his personal one. He may have depleted the joint account. He refrained from such nasty behavior. He also updated his company's human resource records. The system will route his direct deposit to his personal account. He couldn't sleep that night, since he was preoccupied with Isabella's betrayal. He had imagined a future intertwined with her. But now he must confront the realities of a life without her. Countless plans for shared experiences were destroyed following this betrayal of trust. Ethan wondered if he could ever trust another woman. Exhaustion ultimately seized him. But his sleep was disrupted by sobbing awakenings. He was ashamed of his tears, seeing them as incompatible with his masculinity. However, Isabella's treachery made him rethink his sense of self. When he awoke the next morning, he showered and set out to find somewhere to stay. After investigating various possible solutions, he found the majority to be either uninteresting or in dangerous neighborhoods. He eventually discovered a set of 3 duplexes. The unit was clean and well furnished. Despite its small size, he had left with only his necessities. Thus he lacked furniture and preferred not to spend more money. Furthermore, he had no intention of returning anything purchased during his evening with Isabella. Among the units, one was uninhabited and spotless. After issuing a check, the landlord permitted immediate occupancy, confining all his belongings to his automobile. Ethan began relocating them to his new home. In the midst of this, Isabella texted him, accusing him of depleting their joint account. He checked online and verified that she had actually emptied it. He assumed she was upset because she had planned to do so first. But he had managed to remove some dollars earlier. Ethan never got the knack of cooking, and Isabella wasn't much of one either. They frequently relied on eating out or ordering takeaway. Ethan noticed this was placing a burden on his money. So he went to the grocery store and purchased some pre-made meals he could microwave. He also grabbed ordinary kitchen supplies, such as pasta and sauce jars. Having previously lived in a hostel or with his parents, Ethan was ill-prepared to live independently. To keep prices down, he had to purchase things such as bedding, towels, pots, cutlery, and dishes at a bargain store. He charged everything to his credit card, hoping to pay it off soon. While settling into his new home, Ethan saw the person who lived on the opposite side of his duplex. A lovely young woman with strawberry blonde hair. She was uncomfortable when he noticed her, and quickly glanced aside. Despite her attractiveness, Ethan was still hurting from his breakup with Isabella, and had no desire to seek someone new. Ethan moved into his new house over the weekend. Surprisingly, rather than focusing on Isabella, he found himself periodically wondering about his charming neighbor. However, he did not dwell on it for long. I am too emotionally spent to pursue any romantic engagement, and she didn't appear interested. While waiting for his internet to be deployed, he used free Wi-Fi hotspots. Ethan instantly removed any mentions of Isabella from his social media platforms and told his family of the situation. Most expressed sympathy, while his brother suggested that if Ethan had treated Isabella better, she would not have strayed. Ethan then realized that his brother had a relationship with Isabella as well. When Isabella texted him, proposing that he'd be more accommodating in order to win her back, Ethan refrained from responding angrily, and merely indicated that he was not prepared for that. He suspected that her definition of accommodating included condoning her infidelity, something he was unwilling to do. Ethan and his strawberry blonde neighbor ran into each other on Monday morning as they were leaving for work. He greeted her with a smile and a hi, but she reacted with a faint smile and dashed to her car. While he wasn't expecting a warm welcome, her anxious behavior caught him off surprise. Even if he wasn't ready to date, Ethan hoped to maintain a friendly relationship. Ava had been content 6 months prior. Max appeared to be a good person, very beautiful and sincerely interested in her. He was also wealthy. However, Ava did not place a high value on worldly possessions. Her objective was to make a genuine connection with someone who valued her for herself. Max's words and behavior matched her expectations, and when he asked her out, she was overjoyed. Max arrived at her home in his shining new BMW to pick her up. He pressed the doorbell, kissed her on the cheek, complimented her looks and handed her flowers, which she instantly placed in a vase before leaving, guiding her to his car. He politely opened the door for her. They drove to a posh eating establishment, where he used valet parking before leading her inside. Having made prior appointments, they were soon seated with Max, gallantly pulling out his chair for her. He chose a beautiful bottle of wine for them, and Ava, who rarely indulges, found it impossible to deny a glass. Throughout the meal, he kept refilling her glass, despite her courteous refusal. Nonetheless, not wanting to appear ungrateful, she ate it. However, the wine had a substantial effect, leaving Ava rather tipsy by the end of the meal. Conclusion: requiring Max's assistance to keep her stable. As they left, he drove her home. After she expressed a desire to return, he encouraged her to drink water to avoid a probable hangover. She drank from the bottle offered to her and quickly became exhausted. When they arrived at her house, he escorted her to the door and then stated he needed to use the restroom. She was tired by this point, so she took a seat on the couch with a drink of water while he went to the restroom. Despite the early hours, she did her best to keep her eyes open before passing out on the couch. The next morning, she awoke in her bed, enveloped in a blanket. She felt pain between her legs and couldn't come to her senses. She was not going to be in Ethanate on their first date. She suspected he had given her illegal drugs and assaulted her. However, she also revealed that she knowingly allowed him into her flat, which would complicate the matter, especially if she went to the police. When she realized what had happened, she burst into tears in the shower. After getting ready, she headed straight to the drugstore to acquire emergency contraception. She sought medical attention at a polyclinic after not using contraception for a long ethane. Max sent her a note indicating his want to meet again in a few weeks, but she declined. She then fell into tears, returned to her apartment, and began disassembling the bed and cleaning the bedding. She also washed all the clothes she had been wearing the previous night. Despite a strong urge to burn the garments and linens, she abstained, owing to budgetary constraints. She shut herself inside her apartment until Monday, when she went to work. When she came at work, she saw Max circulating stories about her, accusing her of promiscuity. This was his punishment for her refusal to see him again. As a result, a large portion of the staff began to see her badly, and she found herself surrounded by unwanted advances from a variety of guys. Many of them were not even prepared to treat her to a meal, preferring to visit her at home. She was subjected to incessant chatter, and Max even posted images of her. She hoped the situation would calm down, but when it didn't, She began looking for work in another city, far from her current workplace. After resigning and traveling 1,000 miles away, she settled into a cheap apartment and quickly found a new work. She lived alone in a duplex, much like a nun. Despite garnering attention from males at her new workplace, she respectfully declined their advances. After being duped by Max, she was afraid of meeting another man like him in her new environment. As a result, she concentrated mostly on work and alone. Past Ethan's in her tiny apartment. With a slightly jaded attitude toward men, Ethan has gradually acclimated to solitary existence. He had been with Isabella since before he left his parents' house, so living alone was an unfamiliar sensation. Despite the difficulties, he did not mind losing connection with many of his Isabella-related acquaintances. He wished to remove himself from that period of his life. He spent most of his ethane working and alone in his modest duplex. One Saturday shortly after moving in, he was washing his car when his strawberry blonde neighbor appeared from her home. Ethan remained cautious about women, but he believed it was vital to be nice with his neighbor. She approached his car. He chose to introduce himself. "Hello, I'm Ethan, your next-door neighbor." She appeared reserved, then responded, "I'm Ava," pronounced Cecilia Shu. "That is an interesting name." "It is Irish. My grandparents were Irish. Thus I was named in their honor." Ethan had previously researched his ancestry. "Some of my ancestors were Scots-Irish Saracen." The response was factual, not angry. There is a distinction between Scots-Irish and Irish. Irish. "Sorry, I did not want to offend." "Not an issue." "Well, Ava, it's lovely to meet you. I'm right next door. If you need anything, I'm good, but thank you." She stepped into her car and drove off. Ethan wasn't prepared to start dating again, but he understood Sarah was even less so, especially with him. Unbeknownst to him, she was not simply avoiding him. After he finished washing his car, he went inside to shower and eat. About a week later, Ethan looked out his window and saw Ava struggling with a large box carrying a flat-screen TV. He hurried out. "Let me help you, Sarah. I should be able to manage. If it falls, your television will be destroyed. And you would not want that. It's really unnecessary. I guarantee I'll only assist you. Bring it indoors." "Okay." Ethan and Sarah so each picked one end of the box. Ethan grabbed one side, while she moved to clutch the other. It wasn't too heavy, just bulky enough to make it difficult for one person to handle alone. They managed to move it up to her door, where they waited for her to unlock and open it. Once inside, Ethan took a ethane to look about the room, noting the feminine decor, but not too so. "If you ever need help with anything else, Ava, I'm here next door and pleased to assist." "Thank you, Ethan." As Ethan turned to go, Ava spoke up again. "Would you mind helping me unload and set it up?" "Of course." Carefully unpacking the box, Ethan checked its contents before placing it down and carefully detaching the television. He also discovered a tabletop stand, which he constructed and secured to the device. After connecting it to the cable, he was able to turn it on. Ava turned on her cable box and they had an image. "Thank you, Ethan. It would have taken me ages to figure out. It was my joy. I'll leave you to it. But don't hesitate to ask if you require anything else." Ethan departed. He didn't mind spending more ethane with her, but he still felt unprepared for dating. She exhibited no signs of preparation either. Returning to his half of the duplex, Ethan was pleased with himself. Even though there was no love connection between them, at least he had been able to help someone. Despite her persistent distancing, she occasionally gave him a little grin when she saw him. Ethan always welcomed her and she responded minimally. Ethan grew fond of her as he connected with her more. He had once believed the same about Isabella, only to discover that she did not share his feelings. Ava appeared to be more hesitant to engage with Ethan than he was with her. This was not encouraging from his standpoint. But he wasn't sure what indications to look for. She rarely, if ever, asked his help. But he would occasionally notice her suffering with something. An offer to assist. One day, he went out to get something just as Ava arrived. She was in tears and trembling as she exited the automobile. He had never seen her in such a state and was taken aback. But his instinct to offer assistance kicked in quickly. What is wrong, Ava? It is nothing. It cannot be nothing, not while you're crying like this. It is a personal matter. I may not be able to cure everything, but I'm willing to listen to Ethan. I cannot possibly tell you about it. You're married and want to try. Our church died at your door. That would be dinner at the very least. No thanks. I've been there before. That's why I'm upset. Ava stated. Just dinner. I'm not sure what occurred, but I swear I won't make things worse. How can I trust you? Give me a chance to show you. Say shot dinner, but without booze and nothing else. That seems nice to me. I'm not a big drinker and all I want is a good lunch. Allow me a few moments to gather myself. Ava stepped in for her and stayed for around 10 minutes when she reappeared. She had refreshed her makeup and wiped away her tears. Though not quite joyful, she was willing to join Ethan for dinner. Uncertain, he inquired which automobile they should take, and she consented to ride in his. Do you have any preferences for the restaurant? Ava, not necessarily. What style of cuisine do you feel you prefer? Ethan chose the nearby Italian eatery. He believed that Italian would appeal to virtually anyone, despite his desire to guide her by resting his hand on the small of her back. As they entered, he refrained, given her sad demeanor. They were quickly seated and she sat down. Before he could bring out her chair, the server inquired about their drink preferences, and Ava chose only water. Looking at Ethan, he confirmed her decision. Sensing a strong dislike to drinking, he considered it wise. Despite this, he ordered chicken marsala with marsala wine sauce, mushrooms and farfalle, whilst she chose fettuccine alfredo with chicken, mushrooms and peas. Ava began to relax while they ate, but she remained quiet about what had been bothering her. Ethan discovered that she worked as a paralegal for a tiny law company, while he revealed his position as an accountant at a medium-sized firm. He had pondered becoming a CPA, but he never felt motivated. Ava aspired to be a lawyer, but could not afford law school. To console her, Ethan recounted a personal struggle. I've been through some bad Ethans myself. I discovered my fiancée cheating on me with another man. Are you certain she did it willingly and was not coerced? She made her goals apparent and expressed contempt for me. That is dreadful. You're charming and appear nice. But even if you were interested, I'm not prepared to open up again. I don't want to discuss my problems. But I'm not looking for anything serious either. Maybe we can just be friends for now. We are neighbors. We can be cordial in passing. Let us leave it at that for now. Ethan was unclear of his desires, although he did find her pretty and maybe nice. His previous experience with Isabella's betrayal made him weary of trusting any lady who had been in close contact with Isabella for many years. Ethan couldn't help but doubt his ability to discern women. If she could trick him, Max's trickery also fooled higher UPS. Max, who appeared to be pleasant and sincere at first, soon undermined her trust. Although Ethan appeared to be a decent guy, Sowers couldn't help but wonder if he was similar to Max. Manipulative and deceptive. How could she be certain that Ethan wasn't merely pretending to earn her trust? Following Max's treachery, Ava took dramatic efforts to stop her relationship with him, such as changing her phone number and limiting contact to close relatives and friends. Despite this, Max managed to obtain her new phone number a few months later and emailed the images, making Sarah feel offended and exposed. He emailed the images to embarrass her, then shared them with several of her friends and relatives. It was terrible enough that he used her, but he also decided to humiliate her. When Ethan and Sarah crossed paths, they returned to their regular welcomes and scarcely chatted. Ethan had feelings for her but was cautious, while she was exceedingly careful, especially considering Max's previous actions. She banned Max's phone number. When that wasn't enough, she switched phones and numbers again, sharing the new number with only a few family members. Her family advised her to forget the tragedy and move on with her life. She assured them she was doing so, but they persisted on knowing more about her personal life. She spent a large amount of ethane protesting on taking a break from dating, but they eventually insisted on it. To calm them down, she revealed that she was dating Ethan. She gathered enough information about him to make this falsehood appear credible, even though it was not real. That seemed to satisfy her family, though they were curious about the progress. She told them that she and Ethan were taking things slowly, but would give them some fictional information about their dates. This appeared to appease them and keep things under control, until her parents announced that they would be visiting and wanted to meet her new partner. Ava took a deep breath before knocking on Ethan's door. "I need to ask you a favor." "Of course. What do you need?" "Please come inside." Ava entered but remained standing. "I feel terrible." "No, you are not. I have been misleading my parents." Ethan was beginning to comprehend, but he didn't want to make too many assumptions. "What is this about?" "They have been encouraging me to start dating again. And I lied saying I was dating you." "That's not too bad. They are now planning a visit and would like to meet you. So you want me to pretend to be my boyfriend for a few days while they're visiting. They arrive the day after tomorrow and could stay for a week. I like you, and I do not mind pretending to be your boyfriend. But no buts, I just need to understand the boundaries." Damn, Ethan, I hadn't even considered it. Obviously nothing too personal to make it credible. "We will have to hold hands. You'll need to wrap your arm around me occasionally." "Kissing?" "I guess so, as long as we do not get carried away." "I absolutely do not mind kissing you, Ava." "I bet. Just remember that this is not real. But we need to make it appear authentic. And this is only while my folks are here. Then we return to normal. Neither of us is prepared for anything serious anyway." "Thank you. Is it okay to hug you?" "I suppose." Ethan embraced her, but she appeared hesitant in his arms. Keeping it brief, he watched her leave immediately afterward. As Ethan reflected on the incident, he recognized he shared a similar reluctance to engage in meaningful romantic relationships. They, like Ava, needed to keep up the appearance of being a couple. Ava detested the thought of pretending to date someone, even if it was just for show. Nevertheless, she felt stuck. She could have stated that she and Ethan had split up, but she'd have to explain why. and risk being pressured into dating someone else. Despite having several suitors, Sayers did her best to dissuade them, although she reluctantly acknowledged Ethan's attractiveness and decency. Even though Sayers was still wary to let anyone into her emotional space, the possibility of starting a fake relationship eroded the protective barrier she directed around herself. Now she was wrestling with the implications of her decisions, or perhaps her lack of action. Resigned to the circumstance, she resolved to bear it for a few days, bracing herself for what lied ahead. Zach's parents came in town, and she and Ethan welcomed them at the airport. Before her parents arrived, they avoided expressing affection, but the scenario grew unpleasant when they felt obligated to appear more affectionate. When they saw her parents, they held hands and approached them, as if it was normal for them. "Ethan, these are my parents, Theo and Victoria. We are glad to meet you. Ava has talked highly of you. She's a jewel and I'm grateful to have her." Ethan looked at Ava and she smiled before moving in to kiss him. Ethan was taken aback but tried not to show it, returning the kiss instead. After a brief kiss they separated, exchanged smiles and turned to Ava, his parents. "Her mother seems happy while her father was bewildered," Theo interjected. "I was about to suggest you find a room." Ava and Ethan reddened. Victoria stared at them with affection. "Isn't young love beautiful?" Theo shook his head at Victoria. "She's 24, not a child anymore. She will always be my little girl." Theo struck a more serious tone. "Let us get our luggage and leave." They packed their belongings and went to Ethan's car, which was larger. Sarah inquired about their lodging arrangements for the duration of their stay in town. Victoria quickly retorted, "Since you both have your own places, why don't we stay at your apartment and let you two have some solitude?" At Ethan's mom, "Sweetheart, we were young once too. We understand how these things work. Why bother staying at a hotel when you already have a spare bed?" Ava was outraged, but she tried not to show it. What could she do? Admit to her mother that she and Ethan were not really a couple? That would defeat the objective of this entire deception. Ethan looked at her. "That's all right, love. Simply pack enough clothing for a few days." Ava wanted to strangle Ethan and her parents, but she also needed to maintain the facade. "We do not generally spend the night together." Ethan mentioned this when they had some alone. "Ethan, I will sleep on the couch and you can have the bed. I promise I won't make things awkward. My mother already did that. I will not make it awkward for you. This is only for show." Around that Ethan, her parents arrived. Ava and Ethan smiled despite Ava's unhappiness. They chose to lunch at a nice Italian restaurant that Ethan and Ava had previously visited. Theo and Victoria wished to order a bottle of wine. Ava's tried to deny drink, but her mother insisted. "We should honor your partnership with a decent man. I'm not sure I should drink." "Mom, you aren't pregnant, are you? No. Why would you assume this? It is not unheard of. And why else would you be unable to drink?" "I don't drink much." "Okay. Only one glass." "That's my gal." Ava found herself going further than she expected to preserve her deception. Victoria and Theo liked their wine. Although Ethan and Ava only had one glass each, Victoria complimented Ethan. "I believe my daughter made the right choice in choosing you as her partner." "Thank you. She's a beautiful person and I enjoy being around her." "Ava, your dad and I are going to have a nice evening tonight. And I'm sure you two will as well." Zach's cheeks reddened as she looked at Ethan, who responded with a modest nod. He leaned in for a kiss and she returned. Theo looked at Ethan with a tinge of contempt. Sour indicated that you're Scottish. Irish, yes, sir. My ancestors migrated from Ireland many years ago. Not my first preference, but at least you aren't English. Bloody limey jerks. Ava interrupted, addressing Theo. Dad, please quit fighting. Conflicts from a century ago. They still retain control over our land. Ethan replied to Theo. Sir, we are aware that both Protestants and Catholics wish peace and equitable treatment in Ireland. Hasn't much changed. For every Ulster volunteer, there is an IRA member. However, most people fall somewhere around the middle. Try saying that to the militia. There are friendships between faiths. And even interfaith weddings. Not everyone wants Catholics to remain second-class citizens. Given your family background, it appears that you have done your homework. After meeting Ava, I felt inspired to educate myself. I suppose that distinguishes you from many. Caitlin joined in. Our daughter informed us that he's a decent man. I guess she's correct. Ava stayed mute throughout the chat. But when it ended, she turned to Ethan and kissed him again. Their rules of claiming to be a couple seemed to be going better than either had expected. However, they were still confronted with the problem of spending the night together at Ethan's house. Neither felt ready for anything like a physical relationship. Despite their charade after supper, Theo and Victoria showed tiredness from their trip and chose to sleep sparingly. A weekly suggested that they stay in a motel. Are you certain you don't prefer a hotel? It might feel more comfy. Caitlin quickly disregarded the idea. It will be good to have a kitchen nearby. They subsequently delivered the suitcase to Ava's house, with Ethan assisting her in gathering clothes to bring to his apartment. Observing them, Theo said, I'm surprised you don't already have clothes there. Sarah hesitated before responding. I need more than one change of clothes. They went to Ethan's apartment, where he helped her organize her clothes and make room for them. Ethan was not really interested in fashion, so cleaning space was no great concern. Ava appeared careful as she settled in. Noting her anxiety, Ethan tried to reassure her. I will not invade or bother you. I'll simply sleep on the sofa while you rest comfortably in bed. You appear respectable enough. But I've been duped in the past. I promise I'm not like the males you've known before. That is easy to say. You are only the second woman I have ever kissed. My ex-fiancée was the other. She gave a playful, not bad for a person with no experience. I believe we'll have lots of opportunity to gather experience while your folks are here. Let's limit ourselves to kissing, holding hands, and the odd hug. Agreed. Ethan expressed regret for not washing the sheets after using them. She stated that they had not anticipated her sticking over. When there was a knock on the door, he quickly grabbed a pillow and a blanket and sat on the sofa. They quickly concealed everything and discovered Theo standing there. Where is the thermostat and how do you adjust it? Say also went to help him. When they returned, they both dropped onto the sofa. Ethan, exhausted from hours of appearing to be more than they were, began to put his arm around Ava before quickly stopping when he realized what he was doing. She saw the halting gesture, looked at him, shook her head and bit her lip. Ethan appeared remorseful. We need to be cautious around your folks, you're correct. But they aren't here right now. Once they were confident there would be no more interruptions, they prepared for bed. Ethan, who usually slept in just boxer shorts, wore a t-shirt and lightweight shorts to be more modest around Ava when changing in the toilet. She changed into pajamas in the bedroom. Ethan relaxed into the sofa, albeit slightly uncomfortable. and managed to sleep. He awoke briefly when she got up to use the restroom during the night, but quickly fell back asleep. Ethan rose early, straightening up his bedding, in case her parents arrived suddenly. As with the Iraqi or apologetic heir to Daryl Kadir, Ethan apologized on her behalf and brewed them some coffee. While they sipped it, or the heir exited from the bedroom. She had swapped her pajamas for a nightshirt after overhearing them and wanted to avoid suspicion. Theo and Victoria showed an interest in visiting the town and spending the day with Ethan and Ava. Given that it was Sunday, they had no reason to refuse. The group of four spent the day showing Theo and Victoria about the city. They had a great lunch at a strange neighborhood restaurant before evening. Caitlin recommended that they order in and watch a movie with Ava and Ethan. They found something appropriate on his streaming service. Ava saw Hannah better now she wetter so dusty. Sam and Ethan instinctively gravitated nearer each other on the sofa, Ethan wrapping his arm around her while she rested her hand on his leg, maintaining a respectable distance. Despite any reservations, Ethan felt more at ease when Ava embraced and kissed her, although he still felt some sadness from his previous connection with Isabella. Being with Ava felt surprisingly right, with few opportunities for private interaction. Ethan was unsure about Ava's and his senethonance. He hated that their ethane together was confined to 1 week, while Ava and his parents were visiting. But it was the accord they reached. After the film had concluded, Caitlin addressed Ware and Ethan. "I believe it's ethane for us to leave, giving you two some space to enjoy themselves." Theo scoffed in. Even young people do not necessarily participate in such activities every night. Do you doubt these two will? It is not assured. Plus I believe you are embarrassing your daughter, Ava. She blushed at her mother's statement. She wrapped her arms around herself and moved her hand away from Ethan's calf. Ethan moved close to Sayers and whispered softly. He stated clearly that he will only do what he is comfortable with. Theo nodded and turned to Victoria. "He does seem like a kind man." Victoria grumbled and got up, followed by Theo. Sarah rose to hug her folks goodbye. Ethan shook hands with Theo, who touched Victoria's lower back and let her out the door. When they left, Ethan shut the door. Sarah appeared to be on the edge of tears. "I made a mistake by lying to them in that manner. We now have to maintain this facade throughout the week." Ethan approached and placed his hands on her shoulders. But it was not intended to be ineffective. Sayers recoiled slightly. "I'm attempting to make this as simple as possible." With that, Ava gave him a short hug before hurrying into the bedroom. Ethan sighed and took his shorts and sheets from the closet before going to the toilet to change. He switched off the lights and lay down, hoping to slumber. He was conflicted, as he began to feel attracted to Ava. She still seemed disinterested. He considered her as he fell asleep. Ava and Ethan worked throughout the day, but in the evenings, they spent ethane with Victoria and Theo. This routine remained consistent throughout the week. Ethan spent a lot of ethane hugging and kissing Ava. Nevertheless, he found himself sleeping on the sofa, while Ava claimed his bed. Despite his dissatisfaction with the arrangement, Ethan felt a sense of melancholy that their visit would only last a week. They had arrived on a Saturday, but decided to leave on a Sunday, giving them more ethane together before heading to the airport. Ava and Ethan had brunch and lunch with Victoria and Theo. Ethan and Theo placed the luggage into the car. and everything appeared to be going fine. Until Theo pulled Ethan away for a talk. "You two aren't very convincing actors," Theo commented. "What do you mean?" Ethan questioned. "My wife may have some wistful ideas, but I do not. It's clear that you and my daughter aren't lovers. And I honestly doubt you're even a legionate pair," Theo explained. "What gives you the impression?" Ethan questioned. "Ava's behavior contains subtle hints. Particularly when she believes no one is looking," Theo elaborated. "We are not in a romantic relationship." Ethan admitted. "That's too bad. Despite your Scottish-Irish heritage, you appear to be a kind person," Theo commented. "I wouldn't mind if fiction became reality," Ethan confessed. "Good luck with it. If this happens, you have my blessing," Theo replied. Around that Ethan, Victoria and Ava approached. Ethan drove them to the airport and helped them check their bags. Victoria hugged Ethan goodbye and Theo shook his hand. Ava and Ethan held one another as they watched her parents go. Once they were out of sight, he let out a breath of relief and let her go. "Hold on, Ethan." Despite this, he continued to cling to her, saying, "Where?" She looked at him. "They are gone. We don't have to fake anymore. Say where. I understand that you have been hurt. And I apologize for what that person did to you. But I believe I have demonstrated that I am not like." "Then what do you mean?" "I want to be your sincere boyfriend. For the Ethan being. We don't need to adjust anything from our previous week's activities. But I want a chance to prove myself. That was not our agreement. Please give it a chance. For a month. I believe I can be the type of guy you require. And you are the type of woman I am looking for. We were supposed to pretend to deceive my folks. You cheated your mother, but your father saw through it. Was he angry? Interestingly, I think he approves of me. You said 1 month. We merely need to make simple gestures like holding hands, hugging and occasionally kissing. We are strangers. I do not know you, you do not know me. Don't you think? We've learned things about each other in the last week. But is this sufficient?" "It is sufficient to begin with." Despite her initial reservations, Ava agreed to begin a relationship with Ethan. He was careful not to put her under pressure. And she gradually warmed up to the notion of him becoming her boyfriend. Ethan respected Ava's infinite limitations, so they focused on enjoying each other's company. As their friendship developed, Valentine's Day approached. Ethan made a table at a prestigious restaurant and purchased thoughtful gifts for Ava, such as flowers, chocolate-covered strawberries to match her strawberry blonde hair, and jewelry decorated with garnets to complement her style. Ava was pleasantly delighted by Ethan's gestures and seemed slightly shy as she received his presents. She put on the jewelry and expressed her gratitude, complimenting Ethan on his caring deeds. "You seem to like me a lot, Ethan. I love you and admire your hair. I want you to be my strawberry Valentine. And what does that entail?" "Whatever you want it to be." After a nice dinner, they went dancing. The music began with primarily energetic tunes before transitioning to a slow song. Sarah felt herself nearly melting in Ethan's grasp. Ethan and Isabella had previously danced similarly. It never felt as natural as it did with Sarah. As the song ended, Ethan felt a sense of regret. Sarah then looked at him delicately, separating her lips. He leaned in to kiss her. He was experiencing a thrill unlike any other kiss he had ever had. He realized it couldn't last forever. However, he would have been satisfied if it had. After the kiss, all he wanted to do was kiss her repeatedly. However, instead of kissing him again, she smiled shyly and let him off the dance floor. As they left, Ava grabbed her purse and looked at him. "Ethan, I believe it is Ethan to call it a night. They walk back to the car. And Ethan politely opened the door for her. She smiled pleasantly as she took her seat. Ethan drove them to their individual apartments. Ava exited the vehicle as Ethan circled around to her side. Ava. Tonight has been fantastic. Ethan, I feel this has been the most memorable Valentine's Day I've ever had. It does not need to stop just yet. Ethan, I understand your desire. But I am not sure I am ready for it. It does not have to include anything you are uncomfortable with. I have been taken advantage of in the past. You know, Ava, I would never treat you like that. It has changed how I perceive closeness. I only want to do anything you are willing to do. Let's cuddle. And if I do anything you don't agree with, just tell me. And I will quit. I am not sure. Sarah, I sincerely care for you. Are you hesitant to express love? I was scared that if I shouted love, you'd think I was trying to control you. You would not be the first. Let's sit and cuddle for a while. Haven't I always respected your bounds? And you won't push me. I promise. They entered Ethan's flat and sat down on the couch. Ava turned down alcohol but consented to tea, although she reluctantly accepted the first several cups. However, Ethan confidently took a taste before returning it. He hugged her. And then they kissed. When his hand sought for more interesting regions, she stopped him, indicating that she was not prepared for this yet. Ethan backed aside, concentrating on her back. Despite his first mistake, she didn't mind. And he kept massaging her. She stopped kissing him, backed away and rose to her feet. He assumed that would be the end of it. But she then extended her hand to him. And he took it. He got up. And she led him into the bedroom. Once inside, she turned to face him. We could continue. If you only desired physical interaction, then let's do it and get on with our lives. I desire a lot more than just physical intimacy. You are my strawberry Valentine. And I hope you will be mine for a long Ethan. It's simple to say, yet it's accurate. Final words, Ethan. Okay, come here. Let us get down to business, he said. They awoke the next morning still clutching together. Ethan, yesterday was fantastic, but how much of it was real? Valentine's Day may have passed. But I don't want to forget what we discovered. I meant what I said, and I want to stay with you forever. Some argue that marriage is only a piece of paper. Ava, I need this piece of paper. If it means you'll be mine. She shuddered slightly and smiled sweetly at him. I do not know. I probably need some more convincing. I'm happy to spend the rest of my life convincing you. She rolled over to kiss him. Let's get started right now. Ava and Ethan were planning to marry. They obtained a marriage license and held a tiny wedding. Just a week before Ethan and Zach's wedding, Isabella phoned Ethan. Ethan, I made an error. I should not have cheated on you like that. How could you cheat on me? I should not have cheated on you. You were my one genuine love. I believed you were my genuine love. Till something happened. Please give me another opportunity. I'm truly sorry, Isabella. I met somebody else. I am in love with her and we're getting married. She will never be with you. What? I was, however. She is not going to cheat on me and throw it in my face. I made an error. Cannot you forgive me? It's over. Isabella the first love Ava and I intend to marry her. I hope you can find someone you truly love. I absolutely adored you. If you genuinely loved me, you would never cheat on me. Isabella pleaded and cried, but to no avail. Ethan will never be able to give up Ava and return to Isabella 5 years later. Ethan and Ava welcome 2 lovely daughters, Ruby and Scarlett. Ruby has dark hair and is a peaceful youngster, whereas Scarlett is a true redhead and quite temperamental. They have a wonderful home. And everyone has an excellent job. Ava works a lot remotely, making it easier to care for the girls. Victoria adores her grandkids and visits them as frequently as possible. Theo continues to tease Ethan about being Scottish and Irish. Ethan continues to refer to Ava as his Strawberry Valentine, and makes every day feel like Valentine's Day for her. Here is the next story I botched up. When my husband discovered that the child was not his, he reacted violently. Apparently the kid is not his. He threw all my belongings out of our house. I need help. I've been a long ethane user and supporter of this site, but I've never felt the need to come on here. I'm posting here now because I really need advice. My husband immediately kicked me out of the house when he discovered that the chat was not his. It was a one ethane mistake, and I had no idea how to fix it. I understand you're probably wondering what occurred. So let me start with some backstory. My name is Lily and I am a 30-year-old lady. I've been married to Daniel, a 32-year-old man, for 5 years now. Daniel and I met through a dating website. He was quite engaging, and I was immediately drawn to him. We dated for several years before deciding to marry. It was a whirlwind romance, but I never felt like it moved too quickly. Daniel is the polar opposite of me. He's beautiful, engaging and ambitious. He exudes a charismatic charm that draws people to him effortlessly. He's a successful architect, while I, on the other hand, am a complicated character with intelligence and warmth. I also have insecurities and vulnerabilities, and I am not as popular or appealing as Daniel. I was hesitant to start online dating because I had no idea what to anticipate. But Daniel's profile grabbed my attention right away. He seemed really nice and confident. Our conversations were simple, and I felt like we clicked even across the screen. When we first met in person, I was drawn to Daniel's outgoing nature. He made me feel unique, as if I were the focus of his attention. But deep down, I could sense he had his own fears, which made me feel more connected to him. Our connection seemed right from the beginning. We enjoyed simple things together, such as stealing looks across the room and having heart-to-heart conversations. But occasionally, I wondered if I wasn't as outgoing or impressive as Daniel. Despite my reservations, I knew we had something special. I respected Daniel's energy and ambition, and he valued me for who I was. Warts and all, we confronted life's hardships together, full of love and support. Daniel's success as an architect was evident from the minute we started dating. He provided a consistent income, while I pursued my passion as an artist, which regrettably did not generate much money. Daniel did not mind paying the bills. He was simply happy to see me doing what I liked. However, his busy career required him to be gone on a regular basis, leaving me feeling alienated and alone. Despite his best attempts, loneliness crept in, putting a pall over our otherwise pleasant relationship. It was difficult to talk to Daniel about how lonely I felt. He was doing his best to balance work in our relationship, but as the primary breadwinner, his job kept him away a lot. When Daniel went out for the weekend again, and I was feeling pretty down, I ended myself at a bar by myself. That is where I met Nathan. We hit it off right away, and after a few drinks things escalated and we had sex. The next morning regret struck me hard, and I promised myself not to drink like that again. The thought of coming clean to Daniel terrified me. I was terrified of hurting him or ruining what we had. So I kept it to myself, hoping to bury my guilt and move on. I loved Daniel too much to lose him. And I knew I'd lose him if I came clean. The fear of losing Daniel was overwhelming. And the thought of confessing made me nervous. I adored him. And couldn't bear the thought of him walking away. Because of my mistake. So I decided to keep my indiscretion hidden. Locking it away deep within myself. But when Nathan expressed an interest in seeing each other again, I immediately turned him down. I made it clear that what happened was a mistake, caused by alcohol and loneliness. And that I remained committed to my relationship with Daniel. I hoped that by separating myself from Nathan, I could bury the memory of that night and move on. Months passed. And just as life seemed to return to normal, I discovered I was pregnant. I was absolutely horrified. When I discovered I was pregnant, it felt like my world was collapsing around me. I was so worried about Daniel finding out about my infidelity that I forgot to take my birth control pills. Deep down I knew the baby was probably Nathan's. But telling Daniel was out of the question. I loved him too much to risk losing him. So I made the difficult decision to lie and say the baby was his. Daniel was ecstatic when I told him the news, which surprised me. His enthusiasm was contagious. And he wasted no ethane in proposing to me. In just a few months, we were married. Despite the whirlwind of happiness surrounding our wedding, guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. I knew I was deceiving Daniel. But I convinced myself that it was for the greater good. After all, telling him the truth would have shattered our happiness and torn our family apart. Our honeymoon was like a dream come true, with Daniel sparing no expense to make it unforgettable. Despite the challenges of pregnancy, including morning sickness and hormonal swings, Daniel was my rock, supporting me every step of the way. His excitement for the baby only intensified my guilt, knowing deep down that the child wasn't his. But the reality of our situation weighed heavily on me. Daniel was not only the love of my life, but also my lifeline. He provided for us financially, and without him I would struggle to make ends meet. The thought of losing him was unbearable. So I buried my guilt and focused on preserving our marriage. Meanwhile, John's attempts to reach out only added to my stress. Each ethane he tried to contact me, I shut him down, refusing to entertain the possibility of him being the father. I reassured myself that the lie was necessary to protect my marriage and our future as a family. Soon the baby came. He was so cute. And I'm going to call him Felix for the sake of privacy. The first few months with Felix were a wild ride of joy and exhaustion. He was a healthy, adorable little guy, and everyone couldn't get enough of him. Daniel was over the moon about having a son, and he stepped up big ethane to help me out. He even dialed back his work hours to be around more, which made all the difference. With Daniel's help and support from our families, we got through those tough early days. But as Felix started growing up a bit, I started feeling a bit restless. Don't get me wrong. Being a stay-at-home mom was great. But I needed something more. The days at home were starting to blend together, and I missed the challenge of work. So I decided I'd go back to work once. Felix was a bit older, maybe around 2 or 3 years old. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew it was the right one for me. Plus a break from diapers and baby talk. Sounded pretty good right about then. Things were great for a while. However, as Felix grew, it became clear to everyone that he didn't quite resemble Daniel. The whispers started when he was around a year old. And by the ethane he was a little over a year. It was hard to ignore. So I couldn't shake off the worry that had plagued me during pregnancy. Deep down, I prayed that Felix wouldn't take after Nathan in looks. I knew there was no chance he'd look like Daniel. But I hoped he'd take after me. Enough to throw people off the scent. Unfortunately, Felix ended up resembling me a lot. But with a strong resemblance to Nathan too. It didn't take long for everyone to notice the stark contrast between Felix and Daniel. Felix as red hair, stuck out like a sore thumb against the backdrop of Daniel's blonde locks and my own black hair. It was a real head-scratcher for everyone, including me. I didn't really get how genetics worked, but I was crossing my fingers that Felix would end up with hair like mine or Daniel's. But fate had other plans, and Felix ended up with fiery red hair just like Nathan. As Felix got older, his red hair became the talk of the town, sparking questions about where he got it from. I was relieved when Daniel didn't seem bothered by Felix's red hair. He reassured me, saying he knew Felix was his son, no matter the color of his hair. Daniel even mentioned that his grandma had red hair, suggesting that might be where Felix got it from. His understanding and acceptance eased some of the worry I had been carrying then. It meant the world to me how Daniel always had my back whenever Felix's appearance was questioned. One particular instance stands out. When a cousin of Daniel's who was visiting couldn't help but comment on Felix's red hair. Instead of letting it become an awkward moment, Daniel smoothly stepped in and explained that Felix probably inherited his red hair from their grandma. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders as Daniel defended me and diffused the situation with ease. What struck me most was how the cousin responded. Instead of dwelling on the differences, they praised genetics for its mysterious ways, highlighting how it could uncover hidden traits and bring surprises into the world. It was a reminder that some Ethans, what makes us unique is also what makes life beautiful. As Felix turned to, I found myself considering a return to work. I didn't want anything too hectic, but rather something flexible that would still offer me enough of ethane with Felix. Remote work wasn't appealing. Since I was itching to get out of the house, I started browsing job listings. But I wasn't in any rush. Daniel, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about the idea of me going back to work. With his income now bigger than before, he didn't see the need for me to work outside the home. I got down with Daniel and laid it all out, explaining why I felt the need to go back to work. Unlike him, I didn't have a vast circle of friends. Daniel was the social butterfly, effortlessly enchanting everyone he met, while I was more of a lone wolf, with little relationships outside our family. With Felix to care for, my world had become even smaller, especially on days when Daniel was out for work. The loneliness bore heavy on me, and I missed him greatly. The four walls of our home started to feel oppressive, and I craved for a change of environment. There was nobody to invite me on girls' night out or to invite me outside for drinks. It was just me. And even though I cherished the loneliness, those were days. It felt smothering. Going back to work wasn't simply about earning money. It was about regaining a sense of independence and purpose outside of our home. It was a chance for me to break free from the seclusion and repetition of motherhood and feel like I was making a difference in the world beyond our family. Daniel agreed, and even apologized for the loneliness I had been experiencing. He sincerely apologized and assured me that he was doing his best. I told him there was no need to apologize because, truthfully, I felt awful too. Daniel was working long hours to support us, and he was doing an amazing job. After Felix was born, we moved into a larger house with a home theater in a swimming pool. However, dumb Nathan refused to leave me alone. It was annoying to say the least. He had been relentless in his attempts to meet up. So I decided to entertain him this ethane, simply to put an end to it for good. Instead of blocking him like I typically do, I responded to his text. We decided to meet outside of town to avoid being identified when we met. I told Nathan there was no way Felix could be his child. I explained that Felix was Daniel's, and that I had taken the morning after pill. That night Nathan attempted to explain himself by pointing out Felix's red hair, claiming it matched his. I informed him that if he continued to harass us, I would contact the police. I questioned if he had been tracking us, but he denied it, claiming he had only seen us at the store or the park. I reminded him that red hair runs in Daniel's family, proving once and for all that Felix was not his child. I told him to quit fretting and thoroughly describe the situation, so he would not bother me again. I even indicated that I had taken a DNA test, which eventually persuaded him to drop it. Nathan apologized for worrying me and assured me that he did not mean to come off as creepy. He was simply inquisitive, and if Felix had been his child, he would have sought a role in their lives. I stressed that Felix was not his child, and that he should not concern me anymore. Then I left Felix with his grandparents, and Daniel went to work. It was only me at home. I recognized Daniel's stress, particularly when dealing with difficult clients at work. He proposed that I take a break and go out the next day, while he stayed at home with Felix. I was ecstatic. Daniel rarely had a spare day, and he was even less likely to insist on me taking ethane for myself. Now, since I didn't have many people to hang out with, most days it was just me and Felix at home. So the notion of having a day to myself was really intriguing. The next day Daniel handed me his credit card and encouraged me to pamper myself. He intended to take Felix to the park for some quality father-son ethane. I took advantage of the chance and spent the day treating myself. I treated myself to a spa day, had my nails done and even renewed my hair. It felt like a privilege to have some ethane just for myself, and I relished every minute of it. Returning home, Felix was upbeat and joyfully talked about his day at the park with Daniel, while Daniel told me about how much he loves pizza. We watched some TV together, ate dinner, and then went to bed. However, during the next few days, I noticed Daniel's irritation return. I ascribed it to his normal work stress, and didn't think much of it at first. Daniel's irritation intensified, and he began focusing it toward me, which was really frightening. His behavior deteriorated to the point where he refused to connect with Felix. Much communication got strained when Daniel shut down and refused to engage in conversation. Despite my efforts to address the situation, Daniel asserted that everything was all right, attributing his actions to work-related stress. This trend persisted for several days, making me feel increasingly frightened and alienated. Despite my attempts to address the situation, Daniel asserted that everything was great and blamed his actions on work-related stress. This trend persisted for several days, making me feel increasingly frightened and alienated. Concerned about Daniel's behavior, I sought aid from his parents, who were always sympathetic and supportive. After discussing it with Daniel, we agreed that I would pay them a visit in a few days. Daniel was fine with the plan, and he even pushed us to leave, because he needed a day alone. The next day, Felix and I prepared to travel to his parents' house. It was a lovely visit, with cordial chat and assurances that Daniel's behavior was most likely due to work-related stress. Felix adored playing there, and his grandparents showered him with love. After several hours there, I realized it was becoming late and decided to go home and make dinner. However, when I arrived, I was surprised to see not just my items on the doorstep, but also Felix's belongings, signaling that something was terribly wrong. I remained stock perplexed and afraid, staring at in Felix's possessions strewn across the porch. Why did Daniel toss them out? My heart was beating with uncertainty and fear, as I anxiously tried to reach him. But he refused to answer and instead banged on the door. I hoped my neighbors wouldn't call the cops. After what felt like an eternity of noise, Daniel opened the door just enough to peek out and inquire what I wanted. I was taken aback. What exactly did he mean? I just wanted to come in. I had returned from his parents' house feeling agitated, and Felix was exhausted and needed to sleep. The situation didn't make sense, and I couldn't understand why Daniel was acting this way. However, I soon realized why he was acting this way. Daniel stared me full in the eye and told me he knew Felix was not his child. When Daniel stared me down and said those words, it seemed like my entire world had shattered. I wish I could simply vanish into thin air. I cautiously giggled at first, thinking he was playing a joke on me. But his demeanor told me he was serious. He revealed that he had conducted a DNA test that proved Felix was not his biological child. It felt like a hit in the gut. Daniel's calm voice contrasted with the fury in his eyes as he accused me of betraying him, of attempting to pass off another man's child as his own. His words hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving me speechless and filled with remorse. I stood there. I couldn't find the correct words, as Daniel made it apparent that he never wanted to see me again. Standing there still reeling from Daniel's accusation, I saw him walk back inside and shut the door. It felt like a hit in the gut, and I experienced a tornado of emotions right then and there. I could feel our nosy neighbor's eyes on me, but I didn't want to cause a scene or become the talk of the town. I wanted to cry, scream and beg all at once. But I knew there was no use in asking Daniel for forgiveness. He was too adamant, and I didn't want to expose myself to further humiliation, so I hired an Uber to transport me and Felix to my folks' place. Packing our belongings hurriedly, I left the home we shared and returned to the comfort of my childhood home. I am confined in my room, feeling completely defeated. I've been weeping my eyes out for what feels like forever. Leaving Daniel's house was difficult, but now I'm absolutely distraught. My parents are obviously upset, but there isn't much they can do. They're planning an intervention in the hopes of convincing Daniel to give me another chance. It sounds like a long shot, and I'm not sure if it will make a difference. I can't shake the feeling of guilt and dread that I have messed everything up. All I can do is wait and hope for the best. It's difficult right now, because my parents are the only people in my corner willing to help. Earlier I attempted to contact Daniel's parents, in the hopes that they would offer some assistance, but it backfired. They picked up the phone only to give me an earful, making it abundantly clear that they were onto me. Their outrage cut deep, especially since I genuinely cared about them. They'd always been very kind to me, and now I betrayed their trust. I'm filled with guilt because I've let them down so badly. It's a painful reality that's difficult to shake. Another blow came when I discovered Daniel had entered our joint account before I even arrived at my parents' home. Our joint account was our lifeline. Daniel would deposit money for bills, expenses and my personal needs. Since I don't work much as I stay at home mom, it was a significant source of financial support for me. But when I checked the account, I was shocked to see that it had been completely drained. With every penny gone, it left me stranded, and I had to rely on my parents to cover the cost of my Uber ride. It was a painful reminder of how much harm had been done to our relationship. I honestly do not believe Daniel will ever forgive. But I can only hope. I need advice or suggestions for how to approach Daniel. Do you think he will ever forgive me? Thank you for listening though. Hello, just an update. Hello everyone. I know it's been a while since my last post and honestly didn't expect to be back here. But after seeing how much attention my previous post received, I feel compelled to share another update with you all. A lot has happened over the last month, and I'd like to fill you in on the details. First and foremost, I regret to inform you that Daniel and I are divorcing. As I previously stated, my parents had promised to stage an intervention to help me mend things with Daniel. We tried calling him several Ethans, but he refused to answer, even when we used a private number. So we decided to take matters into our own hands and headed over to his house, hoping to speak with him face to face. When we arrived at the house, to my relief, Daniel was home. Despite the tension between us, he still had a soft spot for my parents because of how kind they had always been to him. So he graciously welcomed us inside, although he did shoot me a disapproving look. Nonetheless, he greeted my parents and my brother warmly, and even offered them drinks. I was shocked to hear that Daniel wasn't supposed to know Nathan. He must have noticed my surprise, because he went on to explain Nathan had actually approached him before, claiming that he and I had sex, and that he thought Felix was his. At first, Daniel didn't believe him, knowing I usually stayed home. But Nathan kept insisting that Felix was his child. As Daniel started seeing similarities between Nathan and Felix, he began to wonder if there was any truth to it. That's when he decided to do a DNA test to prove Nathan wrong. I was speechless. There was no defense I could offer, seeing that Daniel wouldn't change his mind. My parents decided it was best to leave. Before we departed, Daniel made it clear that divorce papers would be coming my way soon, and he wouldn't be paying child support. He even threatened to sue for paternal fraud to avoid it. I broke down crying and pleading, but Daniel remained unmoved. Eventually, my parents had to physically pull me away from Daniel's house. They reminded me that I had brought this upon myself. This is everything that's happened. I'm still at my parents' place. And even though Felix senses some things off, he's too young to fully grasp it. Honestly, I blame Nathan for everything. I'll never forgive him. And he won't ever have a voice in Felix's life, no matter what. Thanks to everyone for their support. I only hope others don't make the same mistake I did. Feeling defeated doesn't even begin to explain it. How did I move from a life with amenities like a home theater and a swimming pool back to my parents' house? Daniel had gotten me used to that lifestyle. And now I'm back to square one. Getting back into the workforce after such a long layoff won't be simple. Thank you for listening though. I guess it was good while it lasted. Like my folks say, I brought this on myself. Financially wrecked me in court because of a silly kiss on a night out. I believe the proverb, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, relates to me. Since you really don't know what your adversaries are up to. I got betrayed by someone I believed was my buddy, and I haven't been the same ever since. I'm not good right now, and I don't have any friends. Which is why I want to share this tale with everyone. Hey Redditors. My name is Elena and I am 26 years old. My spouse, or should I say ex-husband, Ryan, is 28 years old. I suppose I should begin recounting the story. At the beginning of my life, I came from a poor family, and that is it. We're a family of 4. And I have one younger sister, Emma, who is now 20 years old. There were so many challenges growing up, especially in my early years. Emma was born when I was 6 years old. But the odd aspect is that she does not belong to my father. My mother was a street food vendor. I'm not sure whether there's a better name for it. But she sold rubbish, such as hot dogs and the like. She dragged this cart along the street. My father, on the other hand, worked as a janitor. So as you can imagine, they didn't make much money. This is why I stated our family was poor. So you can imagine my father's horror when he found out she was pregnant. I was just 5 years old when I heard them shout. They say that children forget things while they are young. But this is not the case for me, because I remember everything. I remember the tale. She told him about how it all transpired. Okay, it's a little hazy, but the common phrase is that it was a dumb error. She refused to give up the baby because she believed she would be special and transform our lives. My father couldn't believe what she said, and he stated he couldn't stay with her anymore. For the first few days, he returned home intoxicated and angry, making me cry every day. I'm not sure how 9 months passed so quickly, but I turned 6 just after my mother gave birth to Emma. Dad was not present. Of course, he couldn't live with Mom having another child. So he stopped going home for ethane. The only ethane he returned home was for divorce. 2 months after Emma was born, my mother was crying and reading a paper with the word divorce printed on it. She signed the document, and I wondered what had made her cry. But as I grew older, I found it out. When Dad stopped coming home, he wasn't wealthy enough to petition for custody, and I didn't think he wanted to, because it was a burden I chose. I recall him kissing my forehead and telling me that he loved me and would always be there for me. I'm not sure where he went, but the next day he returned to pack his belongings while I was asleep. At least that's what Mom said. Mom, Emma, and I were the only ones left in the small house. And Mom was struggling every day. Sure, she cheated on my father, but she was still my mother, whom I adored. And Emma was my sister. Mom was able to send me to school till I graduated from high school at the age of 18. I was also able to secure a position as a babysitter or dog walker. Anything that can get me money. I wanted to help Mom with Emma. Emma was an angel. Yet Mom was not quite correct about how she changed our lives. But I love my sister. I was able to save enough to gain admission to Florida State University. However, I was only a part ethane student because I was also working. This was where things would go wrong, and I had no idea. But there's a reason. I'm telling you the backstory of my life. It's all connected. I was a people pleaser because I would do whatever to make people happy with me, so they would give me extra tips after I finished. When I was a part ethane student and working, I undertook extra work to supplement my income. I offered to perform people's tasks for pay. And indeed, that is how I met Ryan. We didn't have the same major, but we were in the same year. He claimed he heard I performed homework and offered me his own to do. It became a regular occurrence. And it was quite beneficial for me because he paid a lot of money. I asked a friend, Grace, about him, and she said he came from a wealthy family and had a lot of money. After a year, he approached me for a personal purpose. He was not a diligent student, and he told me he disliked reading. His grades were bad, but he didn't care because he just wanted to finish school, until his father informed him he needed to earn great grades, or he wouldn't get anything from him. Ryan invited me to be his instructor, and promised to give me a lot of money. This was a fantastic opportunity for me, and I didn't grumble when I saw how much money he offered. I instantly accepted the tutoring job, and he informed me that I would be tutoring at his home. I declined because it did not seem like something I was comfortable with. I told him and asked if we could study in the library instead, and he agreed. We went to work relatively quickly, and although we had different majors, they were closely related, so instructing him was not difficult. I was always a straight A student. My mother made it a point to remind me of the value of education from a young age, and this helped me much with my studies, as I was often at the library trying to learn new things when I wasn't at work, and this had a significant impact on my academic progress. Tutoring Ryan was surprisingly easy because he learned so quickly. In addition, he had a good memory. He just wasn't serious about his education. Ryan was quite respectful and did not try anything inappropriate with me. In fact, we got along so well that I had no idea when I became so comfortable around him, and I saw he was also comfortable around me. We would talk a lot about life and what had happened to us. It turns out that Ryan never worked hard, which explains his grades. We were getting closer by the day, and Ryan started telling me more about himself, until I felt like I knew him better than anyone else. I knew practically everything about him, including his goals, and why he was working so hard right now. He informed me that he wanted to succeed on his own, and prove his father that he didn't need his money. Ryan, like many other men his age, did not have a great relationship with his father. He was a lot more ambitious than I expected, and I was growing to adore him for it. He told me he wanted to build a big corporation, so we started designing plans together. Ryan and I had everything covered. We had already chosen where the company would be in the next 5 years, and we had also set targets for each year. At first, I misinterpreted the situation. I assumed Ryan was simply fooling around, until I witnessed him put it into action with my own eyes. He had secured a tiny space and basic equipment to begin the task, and this is how our company began. Of course, final examinations were approaching, so we studied harder than ever to conclude on a good note. We were ecstatic, and I was so proud of everything we could accomplish. Ryan had met my mother in Sofia several Ethans before. He and Emily got along great, and I liked how Ryan asked me out. A few weeks after we graduated, I wouldn't say I didn't expect it, but it was a difficult decision for me to make. My friend Grace had a major crush on Ryan, which I knew about. She had told me more Ethans than I could recall, but Ryan never showed any interest in her. I accepted his proposal and we formally began dating. Grace was furious with me, and she did not speak to me for several months. Ryan was a good-looking guy. I never looked at him that way. Before we started dating, I always considered him to be my student. But everything was different. He was now my boyfriend. He was taller than I am. I wasn't very tall anyway, but he had the perfect height. He always looked wonderful, and I assumed it was because he dressed well. But it turned out he knew how to dress, smell, and walk. And he was just perfect. I'd never been a romantic, but I knew ladies would do anything to be with Ryan. Ryan had a friend, Derek, who studied in law and became the company's attorney, as well as Ryan's personal attorney. Derek was an excellent lawyer and a close friend of Ryan's. They had fairly similar backgrounds. Thus they got along great. I knew very little about Derek and didn't wish to learn more. We didn't see each other very often. Only when we had a meeting, when he needed to participate. However, Ryan and Derek spent a lot of ethane together. After a year, Ryan asked me to be his wife. It was a tiny surprise for only a few friends, my mother and sister. But it worked. I consented, and within a year we were married. Our company was doing well for itself and was beginning to gain a reputation. Aside from being official partners, we were now married and everything was looking good. We both understood our roles in making things work and executed them flawlessly. 3 years later, our company had already exceeded all of our expectations, thanks largely to Ryan's efforts. He was far more serious than I had imagined, and he had come a long way from the carefree guy I met years ago. He was really driven. He truly wanted to prove his father that he could do much better without him. And he was proving himself correct. And as his partner, I can vouch to this. Our marital life was regular. Nothing strange ever occurred. We had a very average marriage. Nothing interesting ever occurred. But we never argued, and that gave me immense peace. We were always talking and going on date nights. Aside from that, our marriage was quite simple. We hadn't put much effort into having a baby yet. And I believe that set well with us since. At the rate we were both working, having a baby at the ethane would not be practical. There was always an end-of-year event to commemorate the company's achievements. We didn't always do the same things. The first year involved an official party. The second was a camping trip. And last year it was supposed to be a beach party. But it was modified to a weekend getaway in a cabin. Our company had a little over 40 employees, so it could work. We hired 3 cottages uptown for ourselves. And everything was going well until that ethane. The night before we departed, Ryan told me that he would have preferred if we had just done the beach party. But since everyone else wanted it, he had to go with it. Our company had many young employees, the majority of whom were unmarried. Albeit a few of us were previously married. Out of the 40 of us, only 35 showed up. Some were unable to do so, for various reasons. But as in previous years, Derek was present. Derek is obviously in his late 20s. He is dark-skinned and taller than Ryan. He has a solid build and an excellent overall appearance. His voice provides him a presence among the employees present. We are largely recent graduates from colleges and institutions, with a few still in their finals. We favored employing younger people, so nearly all of our employees were young, exactly like Ryan and I. During our hangout, there were various games available, such as board games, console games and group games, and everyone chose and participated in what they enjoyed. Growing up, I was never a party goer. When my friends were at parties, I would always read books. The first party I went to was one hosted by our company. So having lived for 25 years, this was only my third. I'd always heard stories about how wild the parties were, but I never paid much attention to the previous events. Nothing unusual occurred as a result of the nature of the events. This felt different. Even though it was only Friday night, I could tell that everyone was having fun. They didn't appear to be the organized and diligent workers we expected. Everyone was doing their own thing, and some of the ladies were acting unethically. But I could not complain. It was a party after all. Friday night went by very slowly for me. It was all about partying and dancing. I was on the fence. But I didn't feel like I fit in. Because I couldn't dance. Even if I tried. And I quickly realized that most people were not actually dancing, but rather being touchy and unethical. I left almost as soon as I arrived. But Ryan stayed and danced throughout the night. I'd never seen that side of him before. That day he danced and I observed him for a while. I saw many ladies throw themselves at him, but he politely declined. Deep down I wished I could be a party animal. Just for the weekend. Everyone awoke late on Saturday. After all, most people were hungover. Ryan awoke early. Despite the fact that he had not consumed any alcohol the night before. He does not drink or smoke. And this is one rule he has followed his entire life. That did not change because of the party. He got up and prepared for Saturday's activities. Saturday was a fun day for others. But it was the day that ended my marriage and my life. It began early for me but late for nearly everyone else. I prepared breakfast for Ryan and me. And we reviewed some basic routines. As we prepared for the rest of the day. It was noon. And we all went hiking for about 3 hours. By the evening we got back. We had freshened up. And prepared for the evening barbecue. Which turned into our game night. That was the main event at the hangout. Every board game I could think of was available. And I was an excellent board gamer. After a few wins I moved on to the group games. There were numerous games being played. But I settled on a group of 10 people. Ryan was not in that group, but Derek was. I was unaware of the game to be played. And once it began, I wanted to leave. It was truth or dare. I was torn between staying and leaving. But I chose to stay because I had lived a mediocre life. So there is no such thing as an embarrassing truth. And I assumed that no one would dare me to do anything inappropriate. Because they were already aware of my position and marital status. The game started out soft. Some pretty basic questions were asked. Until someone dared to remove his shirt. And he did, I knew. Things were only going to get heated from then on. Some dirty dares passed around until it was my turn. I was to dare someone. And I dared her to take off her shirt. Which she did without hesitation. I honestly thought she wasn't going to. Turns passed around till it was her turn. And she dared me to kiss Derek. Now everyone had some dare. While I took a shot. For the first ethane I was dared. I'm not a heavy drinker and I had never drank before. Up until that point. I don't know if it was the drink I took. But I was definitely feeling more hyped than ever. When I heard the dare. I thought about it for a few minutes. I knew as much as this was a party. This was a work party. And though Ryan was not here, there was a huge probability of him finding out. I wasn't able to make up my mind. And so I had to take another shot. After the second shot I was definitely drunk. I couldn't think straight anymore. And no matter how hard I tried to control my body, it was difficult. By the ethane the game had gone round again. And it was right before my turn. Was Leo turned. Leo was a company employee and a college student. He was in his finals at the ethane. And before I knew what was happening, Leo was to dare Derek and he dared him to kiss me. Now Derek had a lot to drink too. And was definitely already feeling it. Derek made his way to me while I just started looking lost. Before I knew what was happening, Derek's lips were all over mine. Everything got so dizzy and I passed out after that. I saw Ryan in the distance, running over to me where I was. Before I passed out, I did not know what happened. But I woke up the next morning, next to Ryan in our room. I asked him, but he wouldn't talk much to me. Some days event went by without me. Because I stayed in the room. I had remembered what happened between myself and Derek. And I was not only embarrassed. I also suspected that Ryan saw us. And this made me scared. And that Ryan was someone who didn't like to open up much when something happened. He preferred to solve it on his own. And stay locked up in his head. Until he was able to sort it. And this didn't only make me scared. It made me worry about him. But I knew Ryan always did whatever he set his mind to do. Which only worried me more. Because that made it extremely difficult to get him to change his mind. When he made a decision. I knew Ryan very well. And I knew finding out would ruin our relationship. Ryan didn't speak to me much on Sunday. Even after he got back from the event of the day. And it was ethane to leave. Everyone left on Sunday evening. And the drive back home was a long one. I decided to force myself to believe that he'd understand. Because after all, it was a mistake. But I was wrong. When we got home, Ryan told me that he knew everything. In our 4 years of marriage. That would be our first argument. In my head, I'd assumed he'd realized that it was simply a stupid kiss that happened when we were drunk. Besides, it was Derek who came to me, but he didn't listen. Derek wasn't picking calls either. A few weeks into the new year had gone. And I hadn't seen Derek since the party. I was hoping he'd come and clear the air. Since things hadn't been going well in my marriage. Ever since Ryan and I started having troubles. Because we have not been able to move on. And my previously calm marriage has suddenly become something else. After working together with Ryan for 4 years. He chose to let me depart from the company. He's the owner and CEO. And so his call is definitive. He handed over some divorce letters to me too. A few weeks ago, only a few days after my birthday. I turned 26 and I couldn't believe that my spouse was planning to divorce me because of a foolish kiss. We got to court after signing the documents. And as usual, he got to keep his company and his house. While I got nothing. He grabbed all the money and left me with nothing. Update: everything occurred so fast. It seemed like a bad joke or bad dream. I can't wake up from. After 4 years of employment, I was able to save some money. Which I am still living off of now. But I know I'll need to find something new to do very soon. I moved out of my husband's house. And am now back with my mother. I barely have anything left. And am starting to feel like a burden to my family. Again. It's been 6 months since the divorce. And I still see Ryan's company on the news. Doing well and exceeding expectations. He filed a restraining order against me. After I attempted to talk things out with him a month ago. I haven't found any new job since leaving that one. And I haven't been able to reach Derek since. I still like Ryan. And desperately want to reconnect with him. But I realize it's like a pipe dream that will never come true. I regret my actions and wish I hadn't even left the room that Saturday. I apologize, Ryan. And I understand that what I did was wrong. I still love you. I miss you more than anything. I'm still battling to move on. I attempted to start afresh. But I couldn't get rid of the sensation that I was still somehow connected to my ex-husband. I haven't felt pulled to anyone else. And I can't stop thinking about the life we built together. And how it all came crashing down. As ethane passed, I'm attempting to reconstruct my life. Of course, ethane has helped me heal a little. What could have been continues to break my heart. My sister and mother have been really important to me. Because they have also been my supporters. Of course, I feel horrible about the end of what may have been. But I'm starting to accept it. Of course, I am concerned about the unpredictability of the future. Because I am still young. And the rest of my life will be longer than the one I have already lived. But I don't expect to recover from this anytime soon. Again, Ryan, I love you. And it was only a foolish kiss. I wish we could have worked things out differently. I'd do anything to have what we had again. And if you happen to stumble across this, please forgive me. Ladies, don't only kiss people on evenings out or as a dare. While you're married or dating. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.